You know that a transmission line, whether lossy or lossless, is essentially a two-port network. The difference here is that now we are looking at the situation where the insides of the network are distributed in nature. That means properties depend on the location at which you are observing the properties, especially voltage and current. However, it should still be possible to figure out the various circuit parameters for a transmission line. Today, that's what I'm going to concentrate on. Impedance parameters of a transmission line. We will assume that characteristic impedance is known to us for the transmission line. The propagation constant, which is a complex number, alpha plus j beta, it is also known, and physical length of the line is known as well. Later, we will distinguish between physical length and electrical length. Electrical length will be L divided by lambda. That's why I'm using the word physical length here. So how do I derive the Z parameters for a lossy transmission line? Again, I am drawing the basic schematic, two-conductor transmission line. Input variables are V1, I1. I forgot to write I1. You can write it yourself. And output variables are V2 and I2. We know that behavior of voltage and current along the length of the line is approximately governed by equations 1 and 2. And we also know that Z11, Z12, Z21, and Z22 are defined in terms of V1, V2, V1, V2, I1, and I2 by equations 3 and 4. Now be careful here. In the definitions given by equations 3 and 4, I have put minus sign because the direction of I2 is different. Originally, when we defined Z11, Z12, Z21, and Z22, we had assumed I2 to be going inside the port, while here we are assuming it to be coming out of the port. So to maintain compatibility with the definition in equations 1 and 2, I am putting minus sign in the second term on the right hand side of equations 3 and 4. Once you have agreed to these four equations, basically your job is to apply the definitions of Z11, Z12, Z21, and Z22 along with using equations 1 and 2. Let's see how we do this. Z11 is obviously V1 divided by I1 when I2 is 0, right? Now I2 is going to be given by equation 2 as long as you are willing to put small z equal to L, small l, because that is the output port position. All right. I1 will be again determined by equation 2 as long as you are willing to put small z equal to 0. And similarly, V1 will be determined by equation 1 as long as you are willing to put small z equal to 0. And V2 would be determined by equation 1 as long as you are willing to put small z equal to plus L. Plus L is the physical length of the line. These are the four things that you got to remember. And then you can now go for actual derivation. Z11, V1 upon I1 when I2 is 0. Now I2 is supposed to be 1 divided by Z naught and the whole thing multiplied by V plus e to the power minus gamma L minus V to the power minus V minus e to the power plus gamma L using equation 2. So for calculating Z11, we need to put I2 equal to 0. So let's equate it to 0. What we get is V plus e to the power minus gamma L equal to V minus e to the power plus gamma L. So the ratio V minus upon V plus is known in this particular case. This equation will not apply to all cases. V minus divided by V plus turns out to be e to the power minus 2 gamma L. Okay, now look at the very definition of Z11. It is V1 divided by I1. And V1 is simply V plus plus V minus because small z is 0. I1 is 1 divided by Z naught and the whole thing multiplied by V plus minus V minus because small z is 0 for port 1. So I take that ratio here and write the formula for Z11. V plus plus V minus, the whole thing divided by 1 upon Z naught and within parenthesis V plus minus V minus. Now I divide numerator and denominator of this equation by V plus. And I take Z naught outside. So I get 1 plus V minus upon V plus ratio divided by 1 minus V minus upon V plus ratio and the entire thing multiplied by Z naught. There I put the value of V minus divided by V plus that I have determined in this particular case. So Z11 turns out to be Z naught within parenthesis 1 plus e to the power minus 2 gamma L divided by 1 minus e to the power minus 2 gamma L. You can always further simplify this if necessary, but this is the answer essentially. Z11 depends on the physical length of the line, characteristic impedance of the line, and the complex propagation constant of the line. It can be expected. Now Z12. Z12 definition is now going to be minus V1 divided by I2 as long as I1 is 0. Now I1 equal to 0 means I at small z equal to 0 should be 0. So if I put in equation 2 small z equal to 0 and equate the result to 0, I get V plus equal to V minus. So for calculating Z12, V plus and V minus have to be equal. Now you apply the definition minus V1 upon I2. V1 is V plus plus V minus. I2 is 1 divided by Z naught and within parenthesis V plus e to the power minus gamma L minus V minus e to the power plus gamma L. You divide numerator and denominator by V plus and then use, in fact, you can use directly the fact that V plus and V minus are equal to each other. So you simply get 2Z naught in the numerator and you get e to the power minus gamma L minus e to the power plus gamma L in the denominator. This is the answer, but we can further simplify it. You know the definition of sine hyperbolic gamma L. We can use that to put the result in a slightly more elegant form. It turns out to be Z12 equal to Z naught divided by sine hyperbolic gamma L. Now Z21. For Z21, the definition would be V2 divided by I1 when I2 is 0. Yeah. And for I2 equal to 0, we have already done in the very first case, when I2 was 0, we got equation 6 for V minus divided by V plus. So we can use that directly now, right here. And Z21 definition can be straight away used now. V plus e to the power minus gamma L plus V minus e to the power plus gamma L, that is V2. I1 is 1 divided by Z0, and the entire thing multiplied by V plus minus V minus. Again, you divide numerator and denominator of this equation by V plus, and then use equation 6 and simplify. You get e to the power minus gamma L plus V minus divided by V plus e to the power plus gamma L divided by 1 minus V minus upon V plus. And of course, the entire thing has to be multiplied by Z. So V minus upon V plus is e to the power minus 2 gamma L. Let's put it here. We get e to the power minus gamma L minus 2 gamma L and then plus gamma. Yeah, so I get e to the power minus gamma L second time also in the numerator. And in the denominator, I get 1 minus e to the power minus 2 gamma L. We can further simplify if necessary. In fact, it will be nice to simplify it further. E to the power minus gamma L plus e to the power minus gamma L becomes 2 times e to the power minus gamma L. So that's straightforward. Then I take e to the power minus gamma L from the numerator to the denominator. I'm just double checking my own derivations. So please be patient. So I think, yeah, I got Z12 same as Z21, which is expected anyway. It's a symmetric network. Z12 and Z21 are equal to each other. They're not divided by sine hyperbolic gamma. Yes. Now, final thing, Z22, which will be minus V2 upon I2 when I1 is 0. And I1 is 0 when V plus equal to V minus. So we can use the definitions of V2 and I2 along with the condition that V plus and V minus are equal. Minus V plus e to the power minus gamma L plus V minus e to the power plus gamma L 1 upon, yeah, that's correct. So Z0 comes out, minus sign remains. I get e to the power minus gamma L plus e to the power plus gamma L, e to the power minus gamma L minus e to the power plus gamma L. And this result simplifies to exactly what we got for Z11. You can double check this. Z11 and Z22 also turn out to be equal. And in fact, you can prove it to yourself that the actual formula should be Z0 cot hyperbolic gamma. Just try proving it to yourself. Okay. So that's how you figure out Z parameters for a lossy transmission line. Now, next problem says simplify the results obtained in problem 1 for a lossless line. Simple. Gamma is now purely an imaginary number, J beta. So all the hyperbolics will go away and they will be replaced by circular functions. Z11 and Z22 were Z0 divided by 10 hyperbolic gamma L. Gamma is now J beta. So I think this will work out to minus J Z0 cot beta. Please double check. Make sure I'm okay here. And similarly, Z12 and Z21 turn out to be minus J Z0 upon sine beta. Okay. The next problem which I have not done is to figure out Y parameters. It should be possible for you to do it. Either you invert the Z matrix or go ab initio using the very definitions. I don't have the answer for it, but I'm sure you'll be able to figure this out. It's not that difficult. You write the equations for y parameters and use the telegrapher's equations, and then use the appropriate definitions for the 4 y parameters. Okay. Then we move to ABCD parameters, which is actually more important than anything else in microwave engineering. The basics are not very different, but details of derivation are going to be different for sure. We again use well-known equations for V and I, along with the very definitions of V1, along with the very definitions of ABCD. Now we are putting a plus sign on the right-hand side of equation 3 and 4, because the direction of I2 is same in equations 1 and 2 as well as in equations 3 and 4. By the way, in some books, you will find that for ABCD definitions, they actually use I2 as going inside the port. In that case, they write V1 equal to A V2 minus BI2 and I1 equal to C V2 minus DI2. So we can do that way also, just that I am doing it in one particular manner. Many books do the derivations for ABCD parameters also by assuming I2 to be going inside the port. As long as you maintain consistency, you will be okay. Same answers should come out. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4 are there. And now application of basic definitions. V1 will be, sorry, A will be V1 divided by V2 when I2 is 0. And I2 equal to 0, we have already figured out in the previous problems. Gives us equation 6. So I use the ratio of V1 and V2 now, along with information in equation 6. V plus V minus divided by V plus e to the power minus gamma L plus V minus e to the power plus gamma L. I divide numerator and denominator by V plus and use the ratio of V minus and V plus given in equation 6. I simplify the result. What I get is A equal to cos hyperbolic gamma L. You can double check this. This actually agrees with the results given in David Pozzard's book. So I think I'm okay here. That parameter derivations I did myself. I have not checked against any book. So maybe there is a mistake. Most likely there is none, but you never know. So A turns out to be simply cos hyperbolic gamma L. And now similarly, let's go for B. B is V1 divided by I2 when V2 is 0. And V2 equal to 0, we have also already done this in other problems. It gives V minus upon V plus. No, actually, we have not done this in the previous problems. Yeah. V2 equal to 0 essentially means putting in equation 1, putting small z equal to L, small z equal to small l, and equate the result to 0. So that should give you V minus divided by V plus equal to minus e to the power minus gamma L divided by e to the power plus gamma L. So the ratio now is minus e to the power minus 2 gamma. And then I use the basic definition for capital B. V1 is V plus V minus. V2 is 1 upon Z naught. The entire thing multiplied by V plus e to the power minus gamma L minus V minus e to the power plus gamma. Again, divide numerator and denominator by V plus. Use equation 9 after that. You have to be careful, that's it, Theory is not that difficult. It is, as they did, the derivations have to be done correctly. The value of B that I got is Z naught sine hyperbolic gamma L. Okay. In a similar manner, I went for C and D as well. When I2 is 0 for C, that gives me V minus divided by V plus equal to e to the power minus 2 gamma L. You can check it out. And using the very definition of capital C, along with equation 6, I got capital C equal to y naught sine hyperbolic gamma L. Here I have defined characteristic admittance of the line as 1 upon Z naught. Y naught is popularly used in literature. Sometimes we say Z naught, sometimes we say Y naught for a given line. Y naught is nothing but 1 upon Z naught. It is the characteristic admittance of the line in move, obviously. So C turns out to be Y naught sine hyperbolic gamma L. B turned out to be Z naught sine hyperbolic gamma L. That's funny. Anyway, must be true. And the last thing is capital D. It is the ratio of two currents now when output voltage is 0. So again, V2 equal to 0 gives me equation 9. I substitute it in the formula for D. I1 and I2 can be written easily. Simplify, you get D equal to A, essentially. So D and A are equal, but B and C are not. Okay, they are different. You can always simplify the results for ABCD. Yeah, it's done here. For a lossless line, the ABCD formulas will simplify a little bit, in fact, quite a bit. And problem 5 gives you the answer. You can show the validity of these answers very easily. Then the last thing is show that a transmission line, whether lossy or lossless, can be treated as a reciprocal and symmetric two-port network. This can be done in several ways. Either you use ABCD parameters or Z parameters or Y parameters. If in doubt, you always try ABCD parameters. I've told you in the past that for reciprocity, that means for a network to be reciprocal, AD minus BC should be equal to 1. So check it out. For both lossless and lossy lines, it should be true. And symmetricity means A equal to D, which is also true. Now, I'm not doing any numerical examples on this, but they are fairly easy to treat as long as you know the basic theory. In general, the answers for all parameters will always be complex numbers. For lossless lines, some of them will be real, some will be imaginary. That's it. Okay. Now I want to get back to what I was doing in the previous lecture. Let me quickly run through the entire document once again. We know that in any given transmission line, there will always be some reflected voltage wave. How bad is it? Ideally, you don't want any reflection, but in practice, it is there most of the time. So to know how bad or how good the situation is, we define the ratio of reflected voltage and incident voltage as the voltage reflection coefficient. It is denoted by tau, and obviously it is a function of the location along the length of the line. Now, I have done this in the previous lecture. Let me quickly run through the derivations once again before I move to line impedance. So I take the ratio of the second term on the right-hand side of equation 23 with the first term. to define tau. V minus upon V plus, we know that, but let's take it out anyway. And the rest of the terms merge into a single term, e to the power plus 2 gamma z. Now, when small z is 0, that means you are at the input end, we define the reflection coefficient as input reflection coefficient, which is called either tau in or tau then within parenthesis 0. That means small z is 0. That is obviously V minus upon V plus. By the way, let me give you a very clear warning that you will never be able to figure out, in most cases, the exact values of V minus and V plus. It is always the ratio that matters. Actual value of V plus and V minus will depend on how strongly you are feeding the signal. How strong is the signal being fed to the transmission? Is it a high voltage? Is it a low voltage? Depending on that, the actual values will be determined. But the ratio is more generic. That's why we are looking at the ratio right now. So tau 0 is obviously V minus upon V plus. So tau z, the general formula for reflection coefficient, can be written as tau 0 multiplied by e to the power 2 gamma small z. I'm writing small z with a horizontal bar on it because it's very difficult to distinguish small z from capital Z otherwise. Now, other thing is, we have seen this already, that at the input end, V1 is V plus plus V minus. We can also call it V at Z equal to 0. Fine. We will assume now that the line is terminated into a complex load having load impedance ZL. That would put another boundary condition on this. That would put a condition which I'm going to call boundary condition. If a load ZL is connected at the load end, V2 should be I2 ZL. That puts an extra condition to satisfy on us. So V2 is obviously V plus e to the power minus gamma L plus V minus e to the power plus gamma L. We know that. I2 is also known to us as, okay, it's not here, but we have done it in the past. I2 and I1 and I2 are right here. So using I2 and V2 formula along with equation 67, which is Ohm's law, I get a complicated equation. You may want to look at it for a minute. And please do it yourself also. What happens is, as usual, we end up getting a formula for V minus divided by V plus. Whatever you do to the load always helps you in determining the ratio V minus to V plus. The equation may be different depending on what kind of ZL is there, what kind of things are there. So if you simplify the result that you get using Ohm's law along with the two equations of V2 and I2, V minus upon V plus ratio turns out to be given here. It turns out to be ZL minus Z0 divided by ZL plus Z0, and the entire thing multiplied by e to the power minus 2 gamma L. This is equation 70, I think. Yeah. And V minus upon V plus is tau 0 anyway, we know that. Now tau z is tau 0 multiplied by e to the power plus 2 gamma z. So in that I put the value of tau 0 that I have figured out. So the general formula for tau z turns out to be equation 71. The reflection coefficient will depend on load impedance, characteristic impedance, physical length, and the complex propagation constant. And of course, the position, small z, at which you are measuring it. Okay. For lossless line, obviously this will simplify slightly because gamma would become J beta. The load end will see small z equal to L, small z equal to small l. So at the load end, if I call the reflection coefficient as tau with a suffix capital L, you can see that e to the power minus 2 gamma L minus z disappears because z, small z is small l. So the load end reflection coefficient is simply ZL minus Z0 upon ZL plus Z. But at other points in the line, it will have to be determined using equation 71. For a lossless line, the formulas simplify a little bit. At the load end, it is still the same formula. Whether it is lossless line or lossy line, the reflection coefficient is ZL minus Z0 upon ZL plus Z. At the input end, ZL minus Z0 divided by ZL plus Z0 e to the power minus J 2 beta L. Because at the input end, small z is 0. So in equation 71, you'll get e to the power minus 2 gamma L along with the remaining factor. And gamma becomes J beta. So that comes in here. There's no need to memorize these formulas. If you know one of them, others can be figured out, you know. So these are the formulas for lossless line. Lossless case is very interesting, although it is not a very practical case most of the time. But if you look at it carefully, magnitude of tau, whether it is at the input end or at the load end or anywhere else along the length of the line, the magnitude of tau is the same because e to the power minus j something has a magnitude of 1 always. If I take magnitude of tau z, I'll get magnitude of zl minus z0 upon zl plus z0. The rest of the factor will give me 1. Magnitude of tau l is also the same. Magnitude of tau n is also the same. So for a lossless line, magnitude of reflection coefficient doesn't change anywhere, but the phase changes. But for lossy lines, magnitude also decays because e to the power minus g, 2 gamma something will produce e to the power minus 2 alpha something, and that will be a decay. Now, impedance. No story is complete in electrical engineering unless we bring impedance into the game. Impedance of the line, impedance of a transmission line as a function of small z is defined by equation 77. Total voltage at that point divided by total current. Simple Ohm's law. Okay. Now again, horrendous mathematics. Once we have decided to define impedance this way, again you plug in the well-known equations. Okay. And simplify the result. Z0 obviously comes out on the right hand side and the remaining items go within the parenthesis. Now I will divide numerator and denominator by V plus once again. And V minus upon V plus is the reflection coefficient at the input end. We have defined it. So impedance of the line at any point is related to input reflection coefficient by equation 78. And now input reflection coefficient has its own value. We have figured it out in the beginning of the document. So if I put that value here, the formula for line impedance becomes very interesting. What I have done is I've taken this equation for tau 0 and I have put it in equation 78. Bit of mathematics here. I hope there is no mistake in my derivations. 1 plus tau 0 e to the power plus 2 gamma z, right? And tau 0 is given here. So 1 plus zl minus z0 upon zl plus z0 e to the power minus 2 gamma l. That much is tau 0, then e to the power 2 gamma z, right? And then 1 minus the same thing. Now I combine all the e terms together. So I get equation 79. Good thing is that this derivation has been done by millions of people, millions of times. And hopefully we have made no mistakes. So z at any arbitrary location small z is given by equation 79. We define, for the sake of derivation at least, we define a parameter theta which is gamma multiplied by L minus z. So that the formula is now written as in equation 81. It's easier to simplify that, that's it. What I do is I expand numerator and denominator on the right hand side of 81 and collect all the terms containing ZL and Z0 together. So that I get equation 82. You can verify it later. Now I use the famous formulas for hyperbolic functions. Sine hyperbolic theta is equation 83, cos hyperbolic theta is equation 84. So tan hyperbolic theta is actually equation 85. And that can be utilized in further simplifying 82. If I divide numerator and denominator of 82 by 1 plus e to the power minus 2 theta, I get tan hyperbolic function. That is the crux here. You can double check it. The final formula for impedance of the line at any location small z is given by this well-known equation. I think it's 86, right? Yeah, it's equation 86. Z0 multiplied by ZL plus Z0 tan hyperbolic theta, Z0 divided by Z0 plus ZL tan hyperbolic theta. If you remember the numerator, denominator is obtained by interchanging ZL and Z0. This formula, normally nobody bothers deriving it anymore. People have memorized it by now. Impedance at any location small z is given by this equation. You don't need to know reflection coefficient, etc. We have eliminated all that in the derivation. As long as load is known, Z0 is known, and of course theta means gamma multiplied by that parameter L minus Z. Okay. If I put the value of theta, then the formula is even more straightforward. Well, it's longer to remember, yes. But if I eliminate theta and write the actual formula, this is what I get. I think it is equation 86. ZL plus Z0 tan hyperbolic of gamma multiplied by L minus Z in the numerator, and in the denominator I simply interchange Z0 and ZL. That's the way. Now in case of a lossless line, hyperbolic function will become circular function. Tan hyperbolic of J theta is actually J tan theta. You can verify it. Using that, for lossless line, the formula for impedance is equation 88. Okay, let me take a pause for a minute. We are almost coming to the end of derivations. We'll start applying these formulas soon. Now, one very interesting special case is the input impedance, where small z is 0. If I put small z equal to 0, equation 87 and 88, become slightly simpler. Input impedance for a lossy line is equation 90 because small z is 0. And for a lossless line, it is equation 91. A lot of times we are worried about input impedance because that is where source has to be matched. Maximum power transfer theorem has to be satisfied to the extent possible to deliver maximum power into the transmission line. So input impedance is a very useful thing to know. Other special cases are, suppose you allow small l to go to infinity. It's a theoretical case, but suppose it happens. And forget lossless case. Let's look at lossy case. Tan hyperbolic of infinity actually is 1. If you are not sure, look at it here. Equation 85. If I allow theta to go to infinity, tan hyperbolic becomes 1. So for infinitely long line, the input impedance is simply, because ZL plus Z0 in the numerator and ZL plus Z0 in the denominator, they cancel each other for a infinitely long line. Input impedance is simply Z0. That is one method of defining Z0. Z0 is that hypothetical value of load impedance. No, sorry. Z0 is the input impedance that will be seen in any lossy transmission line if it is infinitely long. That's one way of defining Z0 of a line. That's what I've written here. Other special cases are also there. Now, one thing, for a lossless line, what will happen if L goes to infinity? Because for a lossless line, the formula for input impedance is equation 91. If I allow small l to go to infinity, God knows, I don't know what will happen, really. Tan of infinity. Try to figure it out. We'll discuss later. But important thing is that real life lines are lossy anyway. So it's a hypothetical discussion. I don't know whether the answer should be Z0 or not. We can always verify that later. But it's a very interesting question to ask. There's another very interesting case where ZL happens to be Z0. That's a very wishful thinking that we want to have in our head. If ZL happens to be Z0, numerator and denominator in equation 90 will again cancel. You will get input impedance equal to Z0. This happens for lossy line as well as lossless line. This is an ideal case. If you have load equal to characteristic impedance, it is called matched line. Maximum power transfer theorem will be satisfied fully. Z0 actually can be defined as that value of load impedance for which the input impedance is equal to characteristic impedance. Let's put it this way. Several ways of defining Z0. This is one more definition. Z0 can also be defined as that value of load impedance which for any line length gives the input impedance same as load impedance. Okay, I think I'll stop here. There are a few more things here. Maybe I'll go through that next time because it will involve some discussion along with the derivations. But mostly we are done with this document. Next time I'm going to wrap up the document and then we will start applying all these derivations to solving real life problems. Okay, that's the whole idea.